All right, good evening. Welcome, everyone. It's a beautiful evening here on the North Shore of Long Island in Stony Brook, New York. And we are so excited to be speaking with you tonight about 5 ways that Christian schools can use artificial intelligence in our classrooms. My name is Jeff Smith. I'm the academic dean here at the Stony Brook School, and I've been on the faculty here for 13 years now, getting up there. And I'm really excited to be joined by my colleague. Go ahead, Dr. Riley.
Hi, I'm Dr. Sean Riley. I used to be the academic dean at the Stony Brook School, and now I serve as the executive director of Gravitas, our online program. So I'm excited to be here with my colleague Jeff and sharing this with you all. So thanks for joining us tonight.
Wonderful. Well, let's go ahead and dive right in. I wanted to, with an action-oriented title like 5 steps you can take, it'd be ideal to have a really pragmatic, action-focused webinar, which is certainly our intention tonight. We do want to lay some philosophical underpinnings. We're not going to spend much time on this. We've already done this in a previous webinar, which we'll plug. But we do want to just introduce a little bit about ourselves. Stony Brook is a boarding and day school and virtual school here on Long Island. We've been around for 102 years now. And for all 102 of those years and a little more, we've been championing the idea of the integration of faith and learning. You see, at Stony Brook, we believe that authentic Christian faith and academic rigor are entirely compatible and can be married together. And our seal of our in the right-hand corner, you can see this, is character before career. And so all of our students who come from around the country and around the world and go on to some great colleges and some great seminaries and all these things, we train them in virtue and cultivate their character as they come here on campus.
So we've been doing a lot of work thinking about how to integrate AI into a Christian school context. And so we thought we'd back up and look a little bit at some of the recent data that's come through. So we've got 2 surveys we're going to talk about real briefly just to set the context. NAIS, the National Association of Independent Schools, which we're members of, just released a survey that was done over a couple of months, just recently, January through February, that said that 45% of teachers are currently using AI for administrative tasks, but only 32% are using it for their actual lesson planning. And then there were 69% of teachers that are still not incorporating AI into their curriculum. NAIS just, this is independent schools, usually on the cutting edge of this sort of thing, but still it's a kind of slow adoption. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Only 6% of teachers feel very confident in their use of AI And there's a ton of schools out there that have not finished their policies on AI. They're still evolving. Some don't even have AI policies yet. And then 51% of teachers have not yet received any professional development on AI from their school. If we look at Christian schools, this is not even off the presses yet, but we got permission from Cardis and from ACSI to share these stats that are going to appear in an upcoming publication, April 2024. I highly recommend that you get your hands on that. The Christian schools are in a similar boat. About 3 out of 5 educators have been using AI at work. Only 26% of schools are officially using AI, though, in actual instruction. And only 1 in 4 teachers are very confident in using AI at this point. Obviously, there are major dangers and concerns that come with using AI. So concerns about students cheating, having these new tools that they can use.
I'm on a call.
And concerns about whether it's going to inhibit student learning, whether there's going to be safety issues of exposing students to things that they shouldn't be exposed to, or having their data compromised. Those who are using AI, they tend to use it for lesson plans, for essay prompts, for AI-powered games, adaptive learning and tutoring, which we'll talk a lot about during this webinar. Mostly students that are using it are at the high school level, not too surprising there. And amongst the Christian schools, about 30% have an AI policy in place. Even fewer than that are using any kind of AI filter, and fewer than that using AI-based instruction. At the same time, 81% of Christian educators believe that AI will significantly impact teaching and learning. And so what we're going to do is try to help close the gap between actual adoption of AI in Christian schools and where we ultimately think we need to go.
Great. So we did promise 5 things that Christian schools can do. And I promise we are going to really start at number 1. We're not to bait and switch you, I promise. But we do want to just take a chance to refocus on the mission of Christian schools. You know, here at Stony Brook, our founding head of school, Frank Gabeline, famously said, "Education without character is a dangerous thing. For character, not intellectual agility, is the source of right living." We put this in our course catalog, and we have for a long time. It's a really underpinning idea of what we are. And we think this idea takes on new meaning in the age of AI. And there's a lot more opportunities to see that character is now at an even higher premium than it was before. As I mentioned, we did have a previous webinar where we talked about the philosophical and theological ideas that are foundational to a Christian school thinking about artificial intelligence in the classroom, so as to make sure you're not changing your mission, you're not focusing on other ideas, and that you're still championing, this idea of integration and faith and learning. If you want a quick summary, we were asking folks to focus on formation instead of information, to cultivate both analog and digital skills for our 21st century graduates, and then to think about the integrated ends of education in a Christian school: intellectual, moral, aesthetic, spiritual virtues. And if you want to learn more, there is a link on the YouTube description here that can talk about the slide deck and that webinar itself. Last week on campus, we had a wonderful speaker named Justin Ariel Bailey, who came to us from Dordt University. And he gave a great talk on his book, Interpreting Your World, 5 Lenses for Interpreting Culture and Theology. And he shared this idea of going up to Machu Picchu. A couple years ago, he hiked for 4 days up to the mountains in South America to Machu Picchu in this incredible transformative journey. But while he was doing it, he realized that there was a shortcut, that he could take the train and the bus to get to the top and see all the same sites, get all the same Instagram pictures, have everything be the same to the outside world. But he decided not to do that because the 4 days that he took changed his life. He got a better perspective on the world, a better perspective on the beauty of God's creation. And he encouraged us a little bit to think about how to enhance our humanity and not replace it. So he paralleled his journey up. He talked about ways that he had his humanity enhanced was with his hiking boots, or with his structured backpack, or with his hiking poles, right? And this didn't replace his journey or replace his humanity. And so that's the sort of image that we wanted to take as we go into our first action step shortly, once Dr. Riley here shares a little bit about the idea of what our distinctively human capacities are.
Yeah, one of the things that we talked about in that last more philosophical webinar is that as Christians, we should be filtering all of our decisions about how we should or should not employ AI in the classroom through our understanding of God, of creation, and of human nature. As Christians, we believe humans are incredibly special and also incredibly limited and fallen. And because we're made in God's image, we have qualities that will distinguish us not only from animals, but also from machines, and that give us value beyond what any AI ever could have. In our schools, then, we got to make sure that we're focusing on the bulk of our time on developing our distinctively human capacities, like making wise decisions, cultivating virtues, understanding and communicating that which is personally and communally meaningful, growing in our relationships with God and with others, creating things with our bodies, and solving complex human problems that require emotional intelligence and common sense and intuition. These are the things that really distinguish us from AI, and these are the things that we should be putting a lot of our energy into cultivating in our schools. So after we've first considered what are the ends of a Christian education, what are the goals, then we can start thinking about how we can choose to employ AI tools to accomplish those goals. So what we're going to talk about for the rest of this webinar is how we can use AI to promote whole student flourishing, to deepen understanding, to integrate faith and learning, and to form Christian character. So I'm going to turn it over to Jeff, who's got some really great practical tips on how to do this in a Christian school.
All right, so into the 5 ways that a Christian school can use artificial intelligence today. So number 1, we're going to start with a principle, and we're going to move to practices. Number 1, ease faculty workload in ways that are not student-facing. So what we mean when we say this is we want to step back and ask the question, how can we find new ways to save our faculty time while not changing the classroom experience, right? The reality is none of these that we're going to mention in step number 1 are going to require using AI inside the classroom. We're looking at ways that teachers can compress their time and get more done in a smaller time frame. So what this means is you could generate some curricular material. What this means is you could avoid the need for being an expert in AI. In other words, you don't have to worry about the in-class experience. Is this kid going on ChatGPT and doing something different? Is that kid surfing the internet, whatever it might be? And this is also a really nice way for faculty to begin to be able to do this on their own terms and in their own time. They don't need to be an expert. They don't need to take the plunge immediately, but it's gonna help save them some paperwork time and some ways that they can begin to save their own time to focus on what really matters, the relationships with our students and how we can challenge them and support them and structure them. So what I'm gonna do is share my screen, and I'm gonna show 3 use cases. We're gonna try to orient this from principle to practice, almost like a letter from St. Paul, from doctrinal to practical, okay? So I'm gonna share my screen right now, and I'm gonna pretend that I'm an English teacher here at the Stony Brook School or any school, and I am going to, let me see here, show how a student or a teacher can go straight into ChatGPT. This is ChatGPT. I have entered into ChatGPT 4, to be honest, but it is just ready to go. I haven't done anything except for preload my question. What it says here, typing this out, is make me a 5-question quiz on subject-verb agreement for a 9th grade English class. Make it a challenging quiz, but not impossible. That is the only thing that I've given to ChatGPT. And then when I hit enter right now, I wait for a couple seconds and it tells me that there's an error, and then I reload it and I type it in again, make me a quiz for 9th graders on subject verb agreement, and then it comes in and functions this time properly. So this one right here is giving me a type of quiz where it's a fill in the blank, and they have 2 options. Is it is or are, right? So the idea here is teachers of English have historically, and even gives you an answer key, teachers of English have historically spent a lot of time either purchasing curriculum that has this all pre-made for them or generating it on their own. Now, if you're a teacher, you know you might not want to use this entirely. So the wise teacher here is going to copy and paste this into their own word processing document and then edit it, make it their own, make sure it fits their own curriculum, all those sorts of things. That right there is a really quick way that an English teacher can save some time. But wait, there's more. I'm going to try to get ahead of myself here and make sure that I think I realize what it is. What I've said here is make me a 5-question quiz on Wordly-Wise, which is the curriculum for vocabulary that we use here at SBS. And I say make it in multiple choice format, make it 9th grade level, and make it chapter 6 if you can. I'm going to refresh just to make sure that I can actually get the answer. And then it's going to create for me another quiz very quickly. These are multiple choice questions. These are at the 9th grade level, ameliorate, prodigus. These are words that I should probably know as a 9th grade teacher, but I'm struggling with a little bit today. So with that being said, that's 2 really quick examples of how our teachers can successfully go in to use ChatGPT to compress their own time. Now, there's a couple other really cool things I have in the slide deck. You can see how we've made these sorts of things. One other thing, as a history teacher myself and a humanities teacher, teaching 9th and 10th grade, I'm always trying to train my students to be ready for 11th and 12th grade, where they do the famous DBQ, document-based questions, where on the AP exam or whatever you might see a selection of excerpts from documents, and then the student needs to find a theme in there to answer the question. I used Google Gemini the other day in class to make this for me entirely. I'm teaching a new curriculum this year on the medieval world. I've never taught it. It's a lot of prep, and I needed ChatGPT to really help me out, and it couldn't do images very well. So what I did is I went to Google Gemini, and I asked it to create a DBQ that would normally take me hours to make. Like I made one in the fall that took me 2.5 hours to create on the Byzantine world. It was a little stressful. I was trying to avoid that again. I asked it to give me 5 documents, to have ancient source quotes and to name where they're from. So in this first one, it's telling me it's from Aristotle's The Athenian Constitution, which is a real document, and that's a real quote from it. And then I asked it to give me also 2 images on ancient Athens was the topic here, and the rise of Periclean democracy. So this is a picture of a pottery sherd where they would write the name of the person who would be ostracized or kicked out of the city-state. It's an actual one from the museum. It's a real thing, and it included it in there. It also showed an image of the leader of the time, Pericles. It also gave me a prompt, and it was a prompt that was pretty good. It told me to analyze the rise of Athenian democracy through social, economic, and cultural lenses. This was not a 100% perfect DBQ. Neither were the quizzes like that. And that's why AI needs to always collaborate with human checkers and human autonomy. Don't forget about our distinctively human capacities. As human beings at Christian schools, we have a competitive edge in the marketplace, so to speak, which is simply that we understand what a human being is, an image bearer of God. And that's one of the biggest underpinnings that we can recommend throughout here. Should have mentioned it earlier, but this is an important thing as you begin to interact in the classroom with artificial intelligence. Another sample one in a very similar vein, as a history teacher, I do this thing from Russell Tarr, which is amazing. And they have to make a chart on the board with these taped note cards. And I was normally writing these note cards myself. And just half an hour ago, I made this very, very quickly for my class next week. And it took me 5 seconds to make what normally would have taken me about an hour to create. And so that's point number 1, easing faculty workload in ways that are not student facing. That'll now bring us now into point number 2, which is using artificial intelligence for formative assessments outside the classroom. Now, this is going to begin to have students directly interact with artificial intelligence. And so you might need to have some structure and support in place for your faculty to be able to do this. But what this means is that the teacher can create an AI assignment, or the student can go rogue and do it on their own. But what this is going to do is allow the teacher to set some parameters that the students then use. This allows things like giving narrative feedback on writing to your students, to synthesize slides, student writing, readings, whatever it might be, or to help differentiate instruction inside of the classroom. So let me give you an example here. And the example that I'm going to give you is coming to us from our friends at FlintK12.com, who run an AI interface called Flint. And they are an incredibly valuable partner to us because nowadays the premium is on the editing process and not necessarily always on the finishing product. You know, we were looking for ways that we could really enhance ChatGPT, but take the onus off of our teachers and allow our students to harness the power of AI without having to spend tons and tons and tons of professional development time training our teachers in a brand new thing in a constantly changing world. And Flint AI has been absolutely incredible. What they've done is provided all the power of ChatGPT, but with guardrails for our teachers. And so what this means is it provides structured assignments for our students that our teachers have created and puts basically a fenced-in area where they can use all the power of ChatGPT and other AI systems, but our teachers can make sure that they're doing it in the way that our teachers intend. And so I'm going to show you some examples that are going to come from Flint. So we do recommend them certainly, but this next example is indeed going to come from them. And if you'll give me 1 second while I open up my entire screen to share, I'm going to pull up Flint here. So what I've done in my 10th grade humanities class, we have been working since September on a long project that we call the Gravitas project. And students are required to compare Roman and medieval sources on a big question about what is goodness, what is truth, or what is beauty, entering into the great conversation. So this is the due week of the Veritas paper. It's due on Thursday, and Stony Brook 10th graders are really stressed out right now. And so we're trying to provide some ways for them to get feedback on their paper. There's only 2 teachers for this class. We have limited time. We can't meet with every single kid and do writing conferences with every single kid all the time. So what we did was very simple. We entered into Flint and we created an assignment. And when we created the assignment, all we needed to do was upload 2 things. We uploaded our rubric for the essay and the assignment sheet for the essay. That's it. And then we told Flint, which again is using the engine of ChatGPT-4, we said, hey, give this kid 3 really good things that they're doing, 3 really things that they should focus on to improve, give them feedback on their thesis statement, and then tell them if they're doing their works cited page and citations in the right way. And our students now, we released this to them on Friday, the updated version for the final draft. We've had over 100 kids do it, and we only have 102 kids in the 10th grade for sampling there. And so it's been really successful. For this student, who's one of my top students, it gave him the strengths that he was doing, if you see in this bottom right corner with the kind of purple background. And then it tells him areas for improvement, particularly on the thesis, those sorts of things. Now, if you think about how this can function, right, the idea here is very simple. The idea here is this allows your teachers to still do all the mechanisms that are historically in place. What I mean by that are writing conferences. I mean, peer tutoring, catching up students who are absent, differentiating instructions, maybe because students were absent, because they have learning differences, because they missed a class, whatever it might be. The idea here is that that is all still in place and not going anywhere. That's where a really important part of education happens. But the biggest and most important thing that we can do with Flint is give iterative feedback to students while they write their essays. So when I went to create it, it was one of the easiest things in the world. What I did here was I attached my documents right here. I created a tutor, and it basically lesson planned the entire thing. Just like in ChatGPT, I asked it to give me the tutoring objectives. I said, give feedback on an essay and focus on their thesis statement. And if I want to do this really well, I would upload my expectations for a thesis statement. I can clip it in. I can put a link to a website, whatever it might be. What this does is then takes all of the expertise that's needed for prompt engineering out of the hands of your faculty, giving them more time to prepare lessons, giving them more time to focus on grading, on relationships, parent communications, whatever it might be. You go through here, it then ultimately suggests a grade for the student based on your input and all that sort of fun things. It's a really, really wonderful and invaluable tool. And our students here at SBS have been really blessed by it. So all that to say, there's a breakdown of how we did this in our classes here, but this idea of formative assessments has been really, really key for us. There's some other really wonderful tools out there. One of the things that we mentioned was making a review packet for students. Pretty much any major system can do this, ChatGPT, Gemini, all the really big ones. But one thing that's really helpful, students, at least here at SBS, really love to use Quizlet. And I used to spend many years making Quizlets for my units, and then kids could use flashcards and play games, and it was really great, and they would print them out, and it was this really cool thing that I always liked to use. Now, I don't even have to make them. What you can do, and what I did in this sample here, is I was pretending that I was a chemistry teacher with a deck of slides and a lot of notes that I'd made for my students, and I just uploaded it. And all of a sudden, it took less than 2 minutes for them to process that. It made an outline. It made a series of games based on it. It made a series of flashcards. Again, this saved me an enormous amount of time. Then I just would turn around, send a link to my students, put it up on my course website, whatever you might have. And then the students play games and they study. And that's how they do it. And they know that because the teacher made it with the teacher materials, it saved the teacher a lot of time, and it did not change the student experience at all. In fact, it may have enhanced it by giving it more detail and getting it to them faster, saving times for our teachers. Sean, did you want to share anything about thesis feedback that you all have been doing with Gravitas for number 2?
Yeah, one of the things that we've been doing in the Gravitas program is we recognize that a student's essay really hangs on the quality of their thesis. Everything else should be based off of the thesis. As part of the writing process, we're doing it in steps where first they interact with a thesis tutor that will give them feedback on whether their thesis is clear, whether it is going to lay out, whether it answers the question of the essay prompt clearly enough, whether it structures how they're going to argue, what are their supporting points, and what kind of essay structure is going to be built off of that thesis. So that way, in a one-to-many way, we can give one-to-one instruction before they go and spend all their time writing an essay that could be completely off base, right? So they get feedback right away so that they know, okay, now I can move on to step 2, as opposed to what a lot of students in the past would do, which is they would just write the whole essay and the thesis was bad, so the rest of the essay was bad. They've wasted a lot of their time. Or we would have to say, okay, we're going to do this in steps, but you bring the thesis to me during the next class. We'll go over it there, and then you can go and revise your thesis. And the next day we'll look at it again. And once it's ready, then you can start writing your essay. That's a long process that is actually holding students back who could get ahead on their essay if they got their feedback to them sooner. So it's a way of like removing all of the gates that get in the way of student progress on certain assignments that could be broken down into step-by-step pieces. So, you know, as a intermediate step before you have them submit their whole essay, you can have them just focus on one aspect of it that you want to refine.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sean. One other thing that I would just mention, and I'm not going to walk through how to do this, but I'd be happy to field any questions or emails afterwards, is there's students who miss class. There's even faculty who miss faculty meetings sometimes for important life things. And so there's another tool out there that called Otter AI, which is an app we've used on our phone. So I once recorded a lecture in class that I knew a bunch of kids were absent for because it was kind of that time of year. And then I made a ChatGPT a tutor, and I basically uploaded the transcript and said, this kid missed class and is responsible for this information, synthesize it for them and break it down into 5 bullet points or so, and then use this information to answer their questions that they might have. And so because this was a planned absence and they were off campus for a Stony Brook event, I basically changed their classwork for that day was not to listen to the lecture, which would have been historically. And then if it's a 45-minute lecture, that's another whole 45 minutes they need to do. But instead, they had to read the summary, and then they had to ask 5 questions about how it went, and then be in a dialogue with ChatGPT, and then they had to email me a screenshot. So those are the sorts of things that you can do to kind of catch up students who may have missed and are missing that sort of essential element. Speaking of which, we'd love to move on to point number 3, which is we think that Christian schools can use AI to provide dialogue partners for personalized learning. So, the dream of education is to have a one-to-one tutor instructing your child in all settings, sort of this ancient Greek or Roman setup where you have this expert who is wise and knowledgeable in their field, personally meeting your student wherever they're at. But then you get to the reality of the matter where there's a class of 20 kids and everyone is at a different level. Some kids did the summer reading and some kids didn't. And this kid was absent that week and that kid wasn't. And the teacher needs to constantly triage what they're doing in the classroom. Well, for a long time, it wasn't entirely possible to fix that busy classroom situation. But AI gives us a wonderful set of tools that we can do to enter into actual dialogue with an educator. Now, it could be a virtual version of your teacher. It could be just a ChatGPT or a Flint or Gemini AI sort of personality that you've trained. But no matter what, you can still get a personalized coach for the pace and skills that they need. If you're familiar with Khan Academy, their Khan Migo device is basically designed to be exactly this, personally tutoring you through their curriculum. And obviously, they offer an incredible amount of stuff. I'm going to share my screen again, and I'd like to highlight some of the amazing work that our World Languages Department is doing here at the Stony Brook School, both virtually and online. And so I'm hopeful that I'm going to use this the correct way. But I'm pulling up, again, this is through Flint. They have created an AP Spanish assignment. Our AP Spanish teacher wonderfully and wisely made this wonderful assignment where students are going to have to take on the role of a crime scene investigator, and they're interrogating someone and they're answering questions, and they're obviously doing it in the target language. What is going to happen is the teacher has programmed how this will go, and Flint and ChatGPT have many, many languages available, pretty much every language that you might be interested in offering at your school. And then the student can listen to it if they click this button, or they can read it as it says here, or you can tell them it's only oral and you have to listen to it and respond. And because it has guardrails in the system, the teacher not only gets a rubric and an estimated grade, which in this case was a B, as you can see up here. The teacher, of course, doesn't have to use that grade. But also they get the recording back. So when the teacher goes to make the grading and the assignment, they can click on the listen and they can hear what the student says so that they can talk about pronunciation and vocabulary, all those sorts of things. You click on this here and you can hear what our student said.
No sé, nadie estará con
So you can go through and you can listen to that. The student can, of course, go back and see that sort of thing. This has really transformed our world language classrooms. It gives personalized teaching on this. And if the teacher goes in and gives some parameters on what the vocabulary should be, on what the verb conjugation should be, it really allows the students to get a personalized experience where they're actually dialoguing with a partner as much as possible. Now, let me see here. Sorry, one second. There are a couple other ones that we've done in addition to what we just talked about, these sample tutors. ChatGPT 4 has basically preloaded personalities or tutors that you can do. And I hinted at this a little bit in the last one with a student who was absent and they had to distill a lecture. But ChatGPT, as you'll see, you can even make your own, as we'll talk about shortly, and something that we've made here at SPS. But ChatGPT allows you to either download an existing sort of personal tutor or to create your own based on whatever parameters you might desire. So in this one, I decided to say that I was a pre-calculus student that missed class, and I really need help understanding how to graph tangents. And I went in and there was a tutor that I just downloaded called Math Solver, and it talked me through how to do it. It answered my questions, and then it even graphed the assignment for me. And when I went through, I said, I didn't understand this part. Why didn't this work? How come that didn't happen, right? This is helping students get that sort of Oxford tutorial style feedback where they're connecting with a tutor. They're getting something of a relational experience. Obviously, it's a virtual experience, so it's a little bit different because you're not talking to a human being, but you're still getting personalized feedback. Of course, this is never meant to replace education. This is meant to augment the case where the student is struggling with an idea and wants to finish the homework on time and has a lot going on, but has a question and doesn't want to text their friend about it or ask their teacher over email. This is just another way that can compress time both for students and for faculty, and to continue into that sort of dream scenario of one-to-one education as much as possible. Speaking of which, that'll lead us into our fourth point.
Yeah, so one of the things that we talked about at the beginning was the importance of moral and spiritual formation in a Christian school. This is something that really distinguishes humans from AIs, but we can use AI to help students grow in moral and spiritual virtues. So we've been actually working on building an app out of our character formation program that we've designed. The character formation program has over 300 lessons that we've built out on different Christian virtues like faith, hope, love, wisdom, justice, fortitude, and temperance. We're also working on helping students resist vices like pride, envy, wrath, sloth, avarice, gluttony, and lust. And so as we've talked about trying to get this program, this curriculum essentially, out to the masses, we've tried to turn it into, we're actually in the process of turning it into an app. So every student will have the opportunity to learn these lessons about virtues, to practice spiritual disciplines on a daily basis. So disciplines like Bible memory and gratitude and forgiveness and different kinds of prayer and worship and these kinds of things, service, obviously, and then write journal reflections on it. And so as we're building out this app, one of the things that we've used ChatGPT especially to do is we've got students that are going to be in middle school and we've got students that are going to be in high school. And we know that actually this program is really working really well for college-aged and adult-level students because we know the whole families are doing this program together within the Gravitas program. And so we want to make it so that it works for all those different levels. And it's been written really to that like high-level high school student, maybe even college-level reading. And we realized, okay, the middle schoolers are going to struggle to fully understand all of this. So we're using ChatGPT. We've taken our original content, 330 lessons. It's like a couple hundred pages worth of material. And we're having ChatGPT lower the reading level down so it meets the needs of our middle school users. So we're able to very quickly generate other versions of our original content so that it works for the different readers that are going to be engaging with the content. We've also made it so that we want this to be multilingual. So we're going to use it as a way to translate that material as well. We're in the app, we're going to be creating reading quizzes. So just like what Jeff showed about how you can take some text and then generate a reading quiz off of it, we're going to be using that in order to at least give us a draft of reading quiz questions where students can then show that they read the lesson and understood it. One of the cool things about custom GPTs and also what we can do within Flint is that you can upload that knowledge base and ask the GPT to draw directly from that content that you've uploaded, as opposed to drawing it from the larger language model, which may not grab from the right places. It may not share the values of your school, right? It's not always the case that the values of Silicon Valley line up with the values of your Christian school. And so you've got to put some guardrails around it by uploading your content to it. And so you can grab it directly from there. I've done that also with other reading quizzes in my other classes as well, where you take the actual reading that they did from a given philosopher or theologian, for example, and say, give me questions directly from this text. And it does a really good job of that. And then we're also going to have like gamifications within our Gravitas app. So one of the things that our student focus group has talked about is we really like badges. And so we've had to come up with a couple hundred different types of badges you could get to mark your progress through the program. So how many days in a row did you engage in the program? How many perfect quizzes did you get on your lessons? How many times did you successfully memorize a piece of scripture? Well, as you know, with badges, every one of those has to be unique and it has to be creative. And so we started thinking through with our own creative ingenuity, like as humans, well, what kind of badges would we want? So we started thinking, well, maybe for some of the challenges that they do, we could associate each of the types of challenges with an animal that kind of is connected to that challenge. So if it's a worship challenge, then you pick out animals that are really good at singing, right? Or if it's a service challenge, pick out those weird animals that are really helpful to other animals, right? Like those ox pickers, for example, that like to pick the bugs and stuff off of Cape Buffalo or whatever. Like create a bunch of interesting animals where they could even click on the badge and learn more about that animal, for example. But we're going to use ChatGPT as a way to ideate the types of badges that fit within those categories. So, ChatGPT, give me 20 interesting animals that are known for serving other animals or for serving human beings. Or ChatGPT, give me a list of 20 interesting animals from around the globe that are beautiful singers, right? So we can use this as a way to give us lists, and then we can pick from there which ones we want to actually use. All right, I'm going to do a couple demos as well, just like Jeff has done. So within the actual character formation program, then, we have the ability to use AI to personalize learning. So I'm going to show you first a Bible memory tutor that I've created with Flint. And I'm just going to share that right here. All right, so I'm going to intentionally mess this up just so everybody knows. But I've uploaded the Navigator's topical memory system, which is a list of Bible verses to memorize. And so here's what it looks like. You can see I just have it as a listen and an audio input and output only assignment. So I didn't want to have the text up on the screen, because then if I'm trying to memorize a Bible verse and it corrects me and it says, no, this is the actual text, I could just read the text right off the screen. Now, of course, students can cheat their way through this and have another screen open or something like that. But at least within the app, I wanted to make it so that they could practice without getting hints if they didn't want them, right? So here we go. We'll listen.
Welcome. I'm here to help you memorize and understand Bible verses from the Navigator's topical memory system. Please recite the verse you're working on, and I'll give you feedback. If you're ready, let's begin.
All right, and then I can go ahead and respond. I can do this. I'd like to practice 2 Corinthians 5:17.
Great choice, Sean. Please go ahead and recite 2 Corinthians chapter 5 verse 17.
All right, I'm going to mess this up on purpose so everybody can see what it does. If anyone is in Christ, he is an old creation. The new is gone and the old has come.
It looks like there was a slight mix-up in the recitation. The correct verse is, therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has gone, the new has come. The key points to remember are that in Christ, one becomes a new creation, and it's the old that has gone, making way for the new. Would you like to try reciting it again?
Okay, so what's cool about this is it not only corrected me, but it also even pointed out that the mistake I made is an important mistake that needs to be corrected. And so it can give me feedback. I can even program it to give more instruction about the meaning of the verse if I want to. But for now, we'll move on to the next one. So that's pretty cool stuff. Let me pull up now a custom GPT that I created. So this is, we uploaded our entire character formation master document, right? All of the content that has all the lessons, all the challenges or spiritual disciplines with all the instruction on how to do them, and the journal reflections that the students are supposed to write. So we uploaded that into the knowledge base, and then I created this custom GPT, and we'll look at it now. Okay, so here you can see that this is supposed to give me guidance on a spiritual discipline. It could teach me a lesson about a given virtue. It could create a whole growth plan for me, or it could check my understanding if I wanted to be quizzed on my understanding of the virtues. So let's just try this out. We're going to say, guide me on a spiritual discipline. So I click on that, and I programmed the custom GPT to first ask a follow-up question, which is, could you tell me your grade level and your preferred language? That way it can level the reading level based on the age of the student. So I'll just say that I'm in 7th grade and English is my preferred language. I've tried this in other languages. It works. Of course, there are always problems with translation, but it works quite well for other languages as well. So it says, hey, now let's go through and we're going to practice a spiritual discipline. Why don't you pick one of these options? Sometimes it'll list even more. I can ask it to give me a full list of like 20 something spiritual disciplines, but let's just say I want to try fasting. All right, so it says it's a spiritual discipline that's been practiced throughout history and across various cultures. It gives me some insight into why we fast and what it's for. And then it gives some very specific practical instruction on how to fast properly. And these are all drawn from the content that we've created. It's perfectly aligned with the Gravitas character formation program. So if we look back here through what it says, for a 7th grader, understanding practice and practicing fasting should be approached with care, ensuring it's appropriate for your age and health. We do a lot of work to make sure that students who are struggling with food-related sort of issues, that they don't practice this if they're not a good place to do so, or if they're too young to do long fasts, for example. We want to caution them against that. Here it says that fasting traditionally involves abstaining from food or drink. And we talk about why it's seen as a way to purify the body and spirit, become closer to God, enhance your prayer life. It's a form of self-discipline that helps believers focus not on physical sustenance, but on spiritual nourishment from God. And then it goes through these details. Like, first of all, hey, talk to your parents about this before you jump in. Start small. Don't try to do this massive, crazy fast at first. Work your way up to longer fasts or fasting from harder things. Set a clear intention about why you're doing it. It shouldn't just be going through the motions. It shouldn't be to try to earn favor with God. It shouldn't be to show off to anybody else, right? Talks about how to stay healthy, stay hydrated, how to use the time you would have spent eating instead by doing prayer and Bible reading. And then also how to gently break your fast so you don't gorge yourself at the end of it and get sick. So I'm going to just interact with this now and say, I'm a 7th grader. I'm hungry nonstop. I don't think I can fast from food. Any other ideas? All right. So it says, yeah, you don't have to fast from food. Here's a few other things you might consider fasting from. You could fast from technology or from negative speech or from complaining or from laziness or specifically junk food. And the key is that you're challenging yourself to do something that's achievable, that's going to help you grow in your relationship with God. Okay, so I'll say, I'll try to fast from using my phone. All right. Seems like a good idea. Tells me how to do that, to set clear goals, to inform others, to find alternative ways to do the things, what I should be doing instead of using my phone. Reflecting, praying, staying committed. All right, let me see. Okay, that sounds, I'm trying to be a 7th grade boy here, so that sounds too hard. Can I just fast from doing good deeds today? And now it says very helpfully, it doesn't really align with the spirit of cultivating Christian virtue. And so it tries to push me back in a different direction. One of the interesting things I've seen it suggest is like maybe the impulse to fast from doing good deeds is not in itself bad, because maybe you're trying to earn God's favor through doing good deeds, and that doesn't align with the Christian doctrine of grace. But it gives me some guidance to try to focus on something else. Try to do gratitude, a service, or Bible reading, or prayer. If you don't feel like fasting, let's try some other spiritual discipline you might be more interested in doing. And then gives me some more instruction. So theologically, this is all really well aligned because I've given it a knowledge base that is coming from our character formation program. And so by utilizing the resources that you have as a school, you can program a custom GPT, or you can work within Flint to get the AI to do what you want it to do, to kind of align with your values, your worldview, better than it would do if it was just on its own. Most of these AIs, they're originally programmed to be neutral, especially with respect to religion. They're not super neutral when it comes to moral issues, although controversial ones, they tend to try to avoid controversy. And that's because the companies that run these are trying to make them broadly appealing. They want to be built for a pluralistic society. They don't want to get themselves in trouble. They want their people to keep using them, right? But in a Christian school context, we want to have a much clearer sense of what our beliefs are, and we make sure those are being communicated in all we do, including in our AI tools. And so you got to do some customization if it's going to work for a Christian school context. All right, so that's the ways that we've used it within our character formation program, both to build an app and then also for the actual activities that students do within the app.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sean. And now for the final one, what you can do in your Christian school to begin using AI. We recommend crafting a clear and charitable school AI policy. Now, I know the grammar here, I'm going to admit this, seems to imply that you should use AI to create your school AI policy. We don't recommend that at all, just to be clear. But a lot of questions that we have had on our faculty, on our administrative team, and that we've been in dialogue with other schools, has a lot to do with what should the policy be? How should we prosecute cases of academic integrity? How should we support students and train them in that? And we'd like to take some time and talk about that, because that's weighing heavily on a lot of folks' minds at this time as AI is so brand new. So what we've done on here is shared our school's artificial intelligence policy. We developed this in dialogue with a couple different universities in the New York City area. And our goal here was to make it simple, clear, charitable, very clear to students about what they can do and what they cannot do, but also try to respect teacher autonomy and to make sure that we're not micromanaging the teachers. And so what we came up with is 3 sentences. That's it. And it says, students are not allowed to submit work generated in part or in whole by ChatGPT or any other artificial intelligence assistant. Using such tools will be considered a violation of SBS's academic integrity policy, and suspected use will be reported to the Dean of Students' office. Students may use AI assistants with teachers' written permission and approval. And so that last clause is really key. What that means is, by default, our students are not allowed to use AI for something that they submit, okay? Now, we noticed that the wording here was very intentional. We didn't say you're not allowed to use it on campus. We have not blocked most of it on our campus because we know our students use it occasionally. And we are trying to tell them that, be aware of its limitations, be aware of its powers and its great sides, but also be aware of the fact that it is shaping you as much as you might be shaping it, just like any tool that you might use, which we talked about in our last webinar. So there are a couple other things that we might recommend to think about as you begin to think through an AI policy. To be clear, you're welcome to take ours, which is influenced by other places anyway. Here at Stony Brook, one of our team members has a great phrase. He says, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And basically this idea is it's much easier to prevent AI usage than it is to catch it. So I will tell you, just from personal experience, by far the most effective AI deterrent that I've done in my classroom with my students as they wrote these big, long, scary essays was showed them how ChatGPT writes essays and then graded it in front of them. So when they were writing, as Dr. Riley mentioned, when they were writing thesis statements for this big research project in my class, I took all of the thesis statements in, and then I had ChatGPT just generate 10 additional ones. And then we played a game of, was it AI or did a student write it? And we'd project it on the board, and I would take out my red marker and I would just eviscerate the one that I knew was from ChatGPT. And eventually kids seemed to realize that there was the same kind of soulless voice that would show up in artificial intelligence writing. And the more that you read it, the more that you might begin to know what I'm talking about, because it tends to have the same exact writing style. And students tend to not try to train it to get rid of that writing style. At least students who tend to, cheat on assignments, shall we say. And so that right there, the fact that the students knew that I knew what it was, that I had a pretty decent understanding of what it was and what it sounded like. And most importantly, they saw its own limitations by seeing that it can't do what a human being can do. And as we said at the start, that there are unique human capacities that are distinctive because we are image bearers of God, and that AI, as great as it is and how many cool tools it gives us, is never going to be that, no matter how good it is, right? Of course, we would also consider encouraging alternative assessments wherever possible. There's oral assessments, there's projects, there's handwritten assignments, that sorts of things. Of course, we also recommend structuring the gradebook accordingly. If we put all of the weight on the one essay paper that's outside of class, put a tight time frame on it, not a lot of support and structure in, students are going to panic and they're going to feel a temptation, certainly, to use ChatGPT. But the more that you can have consistent checkpoints throughout, make sure you submit your outline handwritten. Make sure you submit your first paragraph on this date, your second paragraph on this date, and then you as the teacher give iterative feedback throughout, right? That right there is going to go a really long way. And we've seen a lot of success with that here at SBS. We've also, of course, faced our challenges, to be honest. Another thing, we've moved obviously towards a lot of oral assessments. In the same way that you've seen Flint or ChatGPT or Gemini have these really great tools of having a dialogue with someone, there's really great ways to use oral assessments as well. One teacher here is using the oral assessment that they're assigning in their class to basically, you have to give the oral assessment into ChatGPT, and then it will give you feedback back. And the structure there is like a thesis defense. They have to present their argument, sort of like an abstract, and then the students in the class are going to ask 5 or 6 questions that they have to answer. And so the teacher trained ChatGPT, or Flint in this case, to ask the questions to the student. And they were pretty clever because they said, ask 2 really good questions, ask 2 questions that aren't very good at all, and ask 2 questions that are like totally off topic and will be like a weird question, and it shows the student wasn't paying attention. So the student has to kind of be dynamic. And if a kid was absent that day, if a kid is really stressed about oral presentations, then they can do that to sort of either make up for the assignment or to sort of prepare and do a really good job of that. And to sort of be as much structure and support as they can get. The other thing that we'll say is that this is a really wonderful opportunity for conversations about character, and they really matter. Even if you get into the nitty gritty on a student who may or may not have used AI in an inappropriate way, having the conversation about, hey, I love you, but I kind of suspect that this might not be your own writing. Talk to me about your writing process. Talk to me about some decisions that you made. Help us know, it helps the kid know that they're noticed, that they care enough to have someone follow up, right? They know that an adult cares about them and isn't just out to get them. And they know that the adult cares about their character, right? And so they cares about their cultivation of virtue. And so that right there is that distinctively human element that only image bearers of God can ultimately do. What we would also definitely discourage is try to get into the arms race of academic integrity checkers. It's not that there's bad products out there. It's just that if we get this brand new AI tool that detects AI and then is automatically superseded by the advancements in AI, you can't put all your eggs in the same basket. And so this, in many ways, education is changing, but it also means that it's staying even more the same than always. It's about relationships, it's about mentoring, and it's about character. So with that in mind, we are officially done with our 5 ways that we think Christian schools can use artificial intelligence. For those that are joining us, we would love to answer any questions that you might have in the chat. In many of our different mediums, we would love to give a couple of questions, some answers, talk about them if you'd like. And then please know that there are some links in the description. You can see a link to our previous webinar. You can see a slide deck for this one shortly. And then there's also a email distribution list if you're interested in receiving more information about future webinars, newsletters, discussion about the integration of faith and learning. So if there's any questions, please go ahead and enter them into the chat now, and we'd love to be able to discuss them.
Well, Jeff, while we wait for the first questions to come in, let me ask this question that we've received before. So what's step one if you've done nothing with AI thus far, either as an individual teacher or as a school? What do you recommend?
Absolutely. I think step one is just exposing faculty in the faculty, sort of environment, and then students in a more controlled environment to the existence of AI, what it can do, what its powers are, what its limitations are. So what I might recommend is in a faculty meeting, maybe you break it up by department, maybe you just get into small groups, but you basically give them ChatGPT, you have them log in, which is free, of course, and then give them some sort of basic structure and say, come up with an assignment, come up with a lesson plan about whatever you're teaching tomorrow in class, try to put it through ChatGPT and see if it can make any difference at all. And then get your teachers who love teaching and love students and love the subject matter talking about it. And then they can talk about, oh, this is great for these reasons, or, oh, this is terrible. Let me explain why this is terrible. No matter what the result of the actual ChatGPT AI content is, that conversation with your teachers is going to be absolutely invaluable. And then the same thing with students, getting them to do the same thing, having them, experiment with AI. One of the very first things that I did last year in my class was I made basically a Roman emperor custom GPT, which at the time was just copy and pasting a Google Doc into there, and have some fun with it. Like I told them basically, put the Roman emperor on trial and see if you can get him into prison. It was Nero, and they were trying to determine if Nero was a good emperor or not. And the kids were fine with that, but what they very quickly discovered was they had a lot more fun trying to break the ChatGPT system, and they were trying to get it to undo that. And so, although it definitely didn't, obtain my learning outcomes for the lesson plan, what it actually did was something almost even better, was train them. Most of them came away thinking that ChatGPT was really bad, and they used it less as a result of that. And so even if that's the outcome, which I'm very happy with, it was just a really cool way of exposing them to it and just letting them use it at a playground in a sort of fenced in area.
Great. Well, we had a question that I'll take a crack at. Did the school purchase AI for everyone? So it's a great question. What we did was we found this partner, Flint, that we have really loved working with. And we did purchase a subscription for every teacher and for every student. And what Flint does for us, that's better than just getting a ChatGPT 4 subscription for everyone is, first of all, it's cheaper than just getting a $20 a month subscription to ChatGPT 4. Second of all, it gives us as administrators and then as teachers oversight into how the students are interacting with the assignments that we create. Additionally, it has some safeguards, kind of a walled garden within which we can operate. So it has some protections against some of the negative sides that AI can sometimes bring that they've built in as an extra layer of protection. They've done a really good job of making it so that teachers are still kind of in control. Like as you saw Jeff create some assignments, you saw the one that I made for the Bible memory verses. It gives teachers a lot of control over what it is that their students are seeing, what they're interacting with. It gives that custom GPT sort of element, but within something like a learning management system. So yes, we bought it for everybody. We thought it was worth the cost, and we've seen that over time, the adoption of using this for our assignments, our teachers are picking up steam over time because they're seeing their colleagues use it. Their students are talking about how, hey, in this other class, we used AI for this and it was really helpful. What's interesting to me actually in talking with students is that I find actually more resistance from students about AI than teachers oftentimes. The students get a little freaked out by it. They're kind of worried about it. And so this has actually helped some kids that were quite skeptical think, oh, that was actually a helpful learning experience for me. So yeah, we definitely have been really happy with our experience with Flint. And it was worth the investment on our end to make it available to everybody. Jeff, did you want to say anything else about that question about us purchasing AI for everyone?
Sure. I would say, although we have it now, we probably didn't get it in practice until late 2023, early 2024. It was like a mid-year adoption for us. So we had basically just, I think our head of school had a ChatGPT-4 account. A couple of rogue faculty members did. But we primarily just used the free version of ChatGPT for, basically since it came out until probably the early winter of 2024. And there's definitely a lot of tools that you can do. A lot of the steps that we've described can absolutely be done there. There might be a couple extra steps if you don't have the bells and whistles that something like Flint could offer. But there's a whole lot that you can do to begin getting your feet wet. In particular, I would say numbers 1 and 2, there's a lot of really cool stuff in there that we were doing, our faculty were doing, even before we had any institutional access to any AI at all.
Great. Well, I think we're coming up on our hour. I don't see other questions coming in, but we'll give it another moment in case somebody else wants to ask another question. But I'd just love to thank you all for joining us this evening. These are important questions that we think Christians especially should be taking the lead on as we think about how to do AI in an educational setting. We think that Christians should operate with confidence that we understand human nature, and that's a huge advantage in this conversation. We have a way to discern wisdom with respect to what kinds of technologies we should adopt and how, and which ones we should avoid using. So let's leverage all of the worldview knowledge that we have, right? That we can employ as we make these decisions about how to implement AI in our schools. There's two other questions that came in just as I was saying that. So what's the parent response been to AI use in the classroom been like? Jeff, would you be able to speak to that?
Sure. Yeah, that's a wonderful question. Thank you. In general, parents have been really excited that we're talking about it at all, I would say. I have not received any negative parent pushback to the different AI tools that our teachers have been doing. Parents have expressed a lot of concerns about academic integrity, the temptation, that their students, how can I support my student? And so we've received a lot of really positive feedback that we're doing something rather than nothing is kind of the main thing. We have yet to encounter any serious parent concerns about, no, my kid shouldn't be involved in this, or this is bad, or you're doing too much, or you're doing too little. In general, they've been quite happy with it. I wonder if the same would be true on Gravitas as well, Dr. Riley.
Yeah, we haven't heard much feedback from parents. Actually, the little bit that I've heard has been really positive because the kids are enjoying it. That's generally how it goes. If the kids are finding the experience to be helpful, then the parents are on board. So yeah, we haven't had any pushback at all for sure. But always the same kind of concerns that you're talking about are going to be there, and they're for good reasons. There are definitely real dangers and threats, which we talked about in our last webinar as well. We did have a request, like, can they reach out to us for a personal tutorial? Jeff and I both have very full-time jobs, so I don't know if we can put ourselves out to that extent, but we are happy to continue to develop resources for teachers in different schools to be able to use. And we may be able, if you send us an email, we may be able to redirect you to some resources that will be helpful to you. But yeah, we love to be involved, and we also have to protect our own time with our families. So I don't know if we can go quite that far, but good question. There's
a Google form if you want to get more information, and you can put some comments in there, and we'd be happy to reach out if our schedules align. So, yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Great. Jeff, thanks for joining us this evening. Thank you all for coming to our webinar. Stay tuned for information about the next one. We're going to keep going with these, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you so much.
All right. Bye-bye.